We talked about the contractor, the electrician. Again, this is something that actually happened. So I was not called in on the meeting between the general contractor, our building department director, and nobody consulted me as far as the networking goes. In fact, nobody even consulted my boss, the director of IT. We were just notified that at that time, many years ago, that the college had decided to hire this electrician based on bids, and that he was going to be pulling our cable, and we were good to go. But the electrician had a question, and he had a question about running cables certain direction or whatever, and he made that comment when we asked him about the cable, because I'm always leery when an electrician gets hired to pull data cables. Not that they can't do it, not that they're not qualified to do it, because many of them are, but for networking, sometimes you do want somebody who is either qualified for that sort of thing, or that's what they specialize in, preferably, because they know industry standards. You don't have to constantly hold their hand, watch over them, make sure they're doing it right. Even then, we've had highly qualified, contractors that's what they do. They pull data, they pull and terminate data, and sometimes they get shorthanded. They hire somebody off the street who doesn't really know what he's doing, and they don't pay attention, and something gets goofed up. So you still have to be on your toes. Don't take anything for granted. But this particular instance, they hired a regular electrician to pull data cable. He had never really pulled data cable before, and he was asking about pulling cable in a certain area. And so my boss and I were standing there, and I was like, so from where are you pulling it to where are you pulling it? And he was showing me. I was like, you can't go beyond 330 feet. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I don't know if that's 330 feet, which kind of raised some flags. I was like, okay. And like my boss was like, well, what cable are you using? And he goes, I don't know, I got like this Cat 3 or Cat 5 or whatever cable. And it's like, no, there's a difference between those cables. In fact, at that time, industry standard was Cat 5E. Now it's Cat 6 or Cat 6A. So you definitely need to make sure that your contractors are not using old cables. Some of you commented on that. Yeah, how long had he had that box of cable sitting around? Who knows? A lot of contractors will, yeah, I got this old box from a few years back. I don't want to go buy a box of cable. That money that I was given to buy cable is going to go in my pocket. I'll just use this stuff I've got laying around, and it was going to get thrown away anyway, so I'll just use it here. Well, that doesn't fly. Really old cable, not good, especially Cat 3. They used to use Cat 3 for telephone lines. I haven't seen Cat 3 used in a long time. You can still use it. It's just fire alarms, something basic. But usually even those are Cat 5, Cat 5e now. So at that time it was like, okay, we needed to clarify and make sure that he knew what type of cables to use, how far they had to get pulled, making sure that he didn't, some of you mentioned, the angle and so forth, or yanking on the cable. Yeah, you can yank on power cords, but you can't always just yank on Ethernet cable. You have to be careful. Even though a lot of that stuff it's pretty hardy, it can still snap. So, and of course, pulling fiber, that's a specialized job. Would not give that to an electrician. But in this case, some of you have mentioned that you would put a stop to the work and go to administration and say, okay, I put a stop to the work and this is what's going on. You can do that depending on your authority. In my case, I didn't have that authority to do that. Really, my boss didn't even have that type of authority. We had to go to the building director and say, okay, this is the issue, and be aware of what's going to happen if this guy continues to pull the cable. And you may have to pay somebody else to pull cable, or you're going to have to pay us to fix the mess. And that's what happened. We got paid extra to fix his mess. So on one hand, good for my pocketbook, bad because I had to fix somebody's mess. So Some things to keep in mind, sometimes you don't have control of that stuff and you have to tread cautiously. I had no authority in that instance. So I couldn't tell the electrician what to do, what not to do. And I couldn't tell administration, of course, what to do, what not to do. I could voice my concerns and my recommendations, but ultimately it was up to them. And they chose to just kind of shrug and go, well, we hope he does a good job. And if not, you get to fix it. And it's like, great, thank you. And so that was that instance. That was many years ago. Since then, standards have been applied, and we make sure that IT is involved in all building processes, that we are aware of what's going on, that we know what's being installed, how it's being installed, we know who's installing it. We always, advise, please go with a qualified network installer, a data cable installer, because a lot of times, if it's just the electrician who's doing it, either it doesn't get done right, or even if it does, even if he's able to pull it, they don't always terminate. And so that means we have to come through and terminate the end of the cables on both ends, which, that's okay, I guess, but it's nice if you're paying a good chunk of money to a contractor to pull data cable, if they will terminate both ends. It saves time, and if it's done properly, and they qualify the cable too, that's the other benefit of doing that. So they pull the cable, they punch it down, they terminate it, and then they qualify it. They make sure that there are no breaks, that everything works good, and then that way you've got a working network that you don't have to fix along the way or deal with issues. And we've had that to where things were not qualified, and we've either had to fix things, repull cable, or just go, no, that whole section is dead. It got pulled too hard somewhere along the wall, and it's dead. So, but again, like I said, sometimes you don't have control of that stuff. Anyway, I think that answers all of the comments. You all did excellent with your troubleshooting. Keep up the good work. And if you have any questions, let me know.